Hey there, this is Real Talk Baseball. I'm CarloBaseball. With me is WillPower, and then we have a special guest, Walter Perez, here with us. And this is the first edition of Fantasy Baseball. So, Will, did I say it right?
Sounds good to me, man.
All right, cool, man. We can go ahead and keep this recording. Walter, talk about a little bit about yourself. I know you've played 6 years, and you've won 3 fantasy baseballs, and you have a lot of knowledge on this, man. Thank you for joining the show. Tell us about yourself a little bit.
Well, yeah, I have 6 years on fantasy baseball. I have won 3 championships.
Sweet.
And all my life, it's always been about baseball. I love baseball. I watch it all the time, and I enjoy playing fantasy baseball. Yes.
Nice, dude. Thanks for joining the show. Hey, Will, what do you got to say about Walter joining us, man?
I've known Walter for a long time, probably about maybe 10 years now. And we were work buddies back when I lived in California. And I actually met Carlos through my wife. My wife's cousin is married to Carlos. That's how we met. And then Carlos told me about the fantasy baseball league. And he needed one more guy, and I joined the fantasy baseball league. That was my first time. That was back in 2014. And then he told me he needed another guy. So then I asked Walter, knowing that Walter, knew a lot about baseball. And, both of us kind of went in blind. We didn't really know what to expect. But I think for, our first season going in, I think both of us did pretty good. That, like I said, that was 6 years ago. And since then, both of us we make it to the playoffs pretty much every year. We always looking for new players to pick up and drop and trying different strategies. And I have my strategy, he has his strategy, and we've even faced each other in the playoffs a few times. So it's always a nice little friendly rivalry whenever we play each other throughout the season. And then we both try to make it to the playoffs, and then sometimes we even make little side bets, in addition to like the pot that we get at the end. It makes it a little more fun like that. So we both been playing for about 6 years, both won a few championships,
which is cool though.
We have a pretty good amount of knknowledge. So
you guys started together, and then now you guys have your own leagues, which is really cool too. Like, you guys have your own leagues, you guys do all the rules on it and everything. Like, how long does it take for you guys to prepare for that? Like, when do you start preparing for your own league? Does it start in January? Does it start in December? Does it start when spring training starts? Give us a little bit of background of when is it that you guys start?
Go ahead, Walter.
Well, I always, like I said, I'm always involved with baseball. It's before spring training. It's baseball for me. It's blood. I love it, and now I get protection in every team, every player, because I love it. I love it. So I would say all year long. All year long.
Do you prepare for your league all year long?
Yes, yes. There's a lot of players that gets hurt. There's always news. Yeah. So it's for me. It's the whole year. I like it, even when the season hasn't started, you still find news about players. So I'm always involved. Yes.
Nice. What about you?
I kind of agree. There's a lot of times when you have to think about free agency. You have to think about potential trades. For instance, like Francisco Lindor, everyone already knows he's probably going to get traded before the season starts. And that's huge, depending on what team he goes to. If he goes to the Dodgers, if he goes to the Phillies, if he goes to the Yankees, if he goes to the Dodgers or the Yankees, he's going to be a huge fantasy asset. He's going to be more valuable than he is now with the Indians, just because the lineups are so much better. But if he goes to the team like the Phillies, they're going to have to give up some of their starting players right now just to get him. So I don't think his value is going to be as high playing in Philadelphia, just because the guys that are batting in front of him, unless he's a leadoff hitter. If he's a leadoff hitter, then he's not going to get a lot of RBIs. He's probably not going to score as many runs as he would if he was with other teams, just because these other teams that are hitting behind him are better at getting on base and higher batting averages. So stuff like that it really enhances a player depending on what team they play for.
Okay.
So that kind of goes along with saying that I prepare for this all season. There's other guys that pitchers, for instance, that Chris Sale, I knew that he was going to be out this whole season because he had surgery in the offseason last year, and he just wasn't going to be available this whole season. But then he ended up getting drafted in the league that I played because people don't pay attention to stuff like that. So if you're in the know, then it's really going to help you out throughout the whole fantasy league. It's a long season. It's fantasy league usually about like 5 months long, including the playoffs. You don't really want to go too deep into the regular season just because a lot of players start getting rested. That's another strategy too, because if a league goes all the way up until like pretty much like the real baseball playoffs start, then there's a lot of pitchers and position players that aren't going to play every day because their teams, because they're going to make the playoffs, they need to be well rested for when they actually do start game one of the playoffs. So
and that's one of the things that suck about it. Yeah, because I remember when I play, it's like you have these teams already getting ready. In September, usually this happens. The last 2 weeks, you have these teams already clinching the division, and then you have the teams that are like, I'm gonna give this pitcher a rest, or I'm just gonna throw him out there for 4 innings, or I'm just gonna throw him out there for 2 innings, and it sucks for fantasy players. Like, what do you do in that case? Like, is that something that kind of throws off your season, and you had a great season, and then you get to playoffs, and then the teams start doing that? Because it does happen.
It really sucks. Yeah. There's actually one instance, Garrett Cole this past season, his final start of the season was supposed to be on game 60, but he didn't pitch at all. So whoever had Garrett Cole in fantasy leagues this season, they lost out on his potential amazing start because the Yankees wanted to save him for game one of the playoffs.
Yeah.
So that's one of the strategies that you really have to think about. Garrett Cole, if he's supposed to pitch on that Sunday, he probably has a 2-start week. So if he pitches on either Monday or Tuesday, if the Yankees announce that Garrett Cole is going to pitch game one, then you already know that he's not even going to come out. So you might as well go ahead and drop him.
Yeah.
So you drop him after he makes the first start of that final week. And then you have, the opportunity to pick up a different player, unless you're in a league that locks the lineups for the whole week. Then you're kind of screwed. You get him for 1 start, but then you miss out on picking up a different pitcher that has 2 starts that week instead of just the 1. So you kind of have to weigh your options. Is 1 start from Garrett Cole going to be more beneficial for you versus 2 starts from an okay pitcher? Because Garrett Cole, if you're in a points league, he could easily get you 30 points. But then if you have a different pitcher that has a 2-star week and he only gets 10 points in the first start and 7 points in the second start, then you're better off just starting Garrett Cole just for that one start anyway.
Yeah. So what do you think, Walter? Do you feel the same way about the pitchers at the end in September, like the last 2 weeks, and they just hold on and not pitch them?
You will always have to start your ace. It doesn't matter throughout the whole year, you always have to start them because that's why they're aces. But yeah, there's so sleepers is very important in fantasy baseball. Sleepers, what I mean about sleepers is like Dominic Smith, for example. He was with the New York Mets. He played 50 games, 177 at bats, and average of 316, 14 home runs. I mean, who would thought? Especially playing for the New York Mets. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. Sleepers. I wasn't expecting that, but he had a great year. So
you're talking about players that you don't really know. I mean, they're not really recognized as much. I mean, yeah, we know who they are, but they're not really mentioned in the ESPN or Fox Sports and none of these things. Those are the sleepers that you're talking about, and those are the ones you stick to at the end of the season.
Those are the one that helps you win at the end of the season.
Yeah.
Because those are they were the sleepers, and that nobody knew. But if you had them, oh great, that makes you win a championship.
So how do you get to those sleepers? Like, how do you find them? Do you read a lot of things on?
Oh yes, yes. MLB at bat, news, everything. Like I said,
report.
Yes, everything.
So you have a lot of websites that you go to and we're like, this player is good. Okay, gotcha. So then you keep these stats on you, and you're just like, oh man, you're doing it throughout the day, or how are you finding these players?
Throughout the day, in the apps helps, the Yahoo apps, the MLB apps, everything. It really helps a lot. So it's real nice. I like it.
Good. So I'm just trying to get some pointers for me too, you know.
The Yahoo Fantasy app and the ESPN Fantasy app, a lot of times they'll give you like in-depth details about certain players. It won't just be this is one of the things that I look at as a fantasy owner of a team. You're not just looking at these guys that have amazing numbers now, because there's expected stats that when you get into like the analytics of things, there's xWOBA, which means expected batting average, right?
What is it called? X what?
xWOBA.
xWOBA. Like what?
So I believe it's expected weighted on batting average, but it pretty much means what their expected batting average is, instead of or expected batting average, what it's supposed to be instead of what it actually is. So Matt Carpenter, right, for instance, I believe it was like 3 years ago, he just had this amazing season, and he hadn't been that good in a really long time, right? Everyone knows who Matt Carpenter is. And he hadn't been doing that good for the past few seasons. He was like a 250, 260 hitter with maybe 30 home runs, but then all of a sudden he just breaks out into this crazy hot streak, and it lasted him about 4 months, which is almost the whole season. And luckily I had picked him up in 3 of my leagues. And the only reason why I actually picked him up was because I look at his xWOBA. I also look at his hard hit percentage. So when you look at how hard these players are hitting the ball, sometimes it's just bad luck. A lot of times these guys are hitting the ball super hard, doing everything perfect, and they get out because it's a line drive straight at the shortstop. It's a line drive straight at the center fielder. It's not their fault. They did everything right, but that's one of the reasons why I prefer on base percentage rather than batting average, because a lot of times these guys batting average, they suffer even though they're doing everything right.
Yeah, so, I agree with you on that.
So a lot of times, if you're looking at this hard hit percentage, if they have a 25% hard contact rate, that means that out of every 4 at bats, at least one of those is going to be a hard hit, which means that even if their batting average is kind of low right now, because their expected batting average is higher, then usually it'll kind of like balance itself out. And at the end of the season, you're going to have this amazing player, which is exactly what happened to me when I picked up Matt Carpenter.
Gotcha. So I know we like to talk about the big time players, right? Those go in the first 4 or 5 rounds. Does the 6 pick, 7 pick, 8 pick, and so on as important as the first pick in your team? Let's say you're playing on a 10 player fantasy league. Is that 6, 7 beyond pick as important as the first pick?
Me or Walter?
Let's hear from Walter.
Oh, it's very important, because that's going to determine if you pick the right picks on the 6th, 7th round, because it's harder. It's less players, and you have to do more homework.
Yeah.
More homework. I mean by that, you got to check more stats, because those are players that nobody pays attention, like the all-stars that you could see that all the time. Yeah. But those players you don't hear a lot, and that's where you have to do your homework, and that's what it determines if you're gonna win a championship or not. The last picks are very important.
So I've seen you play, Walter, and I saw your picks, and you had a great team, and then during the season I seen you drop, and boom, you're dropping and picking up, and you made it to the playoffs, which is good. Like, so you're doing this as you're going, and your draft was pretty good, and then you go into the season and you're like, okay, this guy's not doing so well. Like, what's the line where you start dropping these players? Like, is it a 300 batting average? Are you looking at 300 batting? Are you looking at home runs? Like, wait, let me drop this guy and I can pick up this guy that's batting 400. Is that something that's going through your head?
Yes, definitely. You do that. You have to do that because player gets hot, and when they get hot, they stay hot. So that's when you have to get them. You have to get them in your lineup because it's gonna help you win weekly. So that's how you advance and you get there.
Gotcha. Is that the same thing you do, Will, or you do
well,
it different? Like you say, you did the WOBA, right? Like X-WOBA.
Yeah. So if it's a batter that you're talking about, I always kind of look at their expected stats because to me that's very important. If I have a guy like take Jose Ramirez for instance, right?
Yeah.
He was MVP caliber his first like 2 or 3 seasons, and then all of a sudden he just sucked really bad, and he was getting dropped left and right. And I was watching him. Someone had dropped him and I picked him up. I was like, Jose Ramirez, you don't drop Jose Ramirez, you know?
No, you don't.
And I ended up picking him up, and he didn't do anything for me. So he actually hindered me. But there are some players that you just have to trust. And sometimes, even if they're doing bad, you still keep them on your team anyway. And Jose Ramirez, to me, was one of those. And then the following season after that, he started off real slow, but then towards the middle of the season, he started getting really good again. And then look at him this season. He had MVP numbers again. So a lot of times, if I'm trying to decide if I'm going to drop a player or not, I look at those expected stats, the hard contact rate and stuff like that. Not really if they're in a cold streak. Sometimes it really is just a cold streak and they don't get hot again. But it really depends on the player. If it's a really well-known player that I've watched for a long time, then I kind of give them more of the benefit of the doubt. But if it's a newer guy, those are the guys that I'm more willing to drop because most likely they're still going to be free agents. And if they get hot again, I can still pick them up because a lot of guys don't really know about players like that.
Okay. So you won't drop a Mike Trout, you know?
Hell no.
I mean, that's one of the first picks, right? I'm pretty sure that's your first round player.
Top 10, yes. Top 10, yeah.
Top 10. And okay, so with that said, who is your top pick? If you were the first player actually the first fantasy team to pick your player, who would it be? And you guys can go ahead and just go. Go ahead, Walter.
Well, I always like getting a batter because a pitcher, yes, it's important, but a batter gives you all stats. So for me, I will always go with a batter on my first pick.
Okay. And that's just because they play every day and they'll get you more points, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about you, Will?
So for me, it really depends on what type of league it is because majority of the time, most leagues are points leagues. And in most points leagues, pitchers are more valuable than hitters are. But then there's also categories leagues where the pitchers are equally as valuable as the hitters and vice versa. So if it's a points league, and I always kind of pay attention to how many points, everything gives each player. So if the pitchers are going to be a little bit more valuable, then if I have the number 1 pick overall, I'm going like a Garrett Cole or, like a couple years ago would have been a Jacob deGrom. A few years before that would have been a Clayton Kershaw. But now, because hitters are so dominant, because of the launch angle, because of so many home runs, I'm more going for hitters now, especially in categories leagues. Number 1 for me overall it's got to be Mike Trout. I don't care if he hit 290 with only 24 home runs the season before. He has such a good track record where maybe it was just a shoulder thing or an ankle thing that was kind of hindering him, but this is a brand new season. I don't think that anyone else can really take the number 1 spot. I'm going Mike Trout all the way. He's just it's all about consistency for me. A lot of people try to say, when Mookie Betts had his MVP season, the year after that, he should have been the number 1 pick overall. And then after Christian Yelich had his MVP season, then he should have been the number 1 pick overall after that. But I mean, Mookie Betts had a down season after his MVP. Yelich had a down season after his MVP. So
Bellinger too.
Exactly. So you You could kind of go off of last year's stats. It does help, but I think consistency is key. And ever since Mike Trout has broken into the league, he has been a 290 to 320 hitter every single season, and he's pretty much on pace for like 45 to 50 home runs every year.
And that's a good way to put it. To be honest, consistency in fantasy baseball, it means a lot. It just doesn't mean like the previous season he did this, but then you look at the first 2 or 3 seasons that player's been in the league, and he wasn't even hitting those numbers. And that one year he hits it. How do you expect him to go first in the fantasy the next year? And that's right. You're right. Consistency is really important for fantasy. I even know that. Like I trust those players more than the ones that had a great season the season before. And I just don't see them going. I mean, yeah, there's going to be players out there that go like fantasy players that go like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and pick them. But then you're kind of like sitting back and like, well, he only had one good season. But if you want to go for it, go for it. That's you kind of have a player that we don't know what you're going to get. So with that said, are you like, do you go into the rules before you guys start drafting? Because I know different leagues have different rules, right? Different point systems. And you just mentioned it, Will, like they have a lot of different point systems and stuff like that. So Walter, do you think, or do you feel like you need to go in to read those rules so you can understand them and be like, this is going to determine my picks on the fantasy baseball?
Yes, exactly. The settings is very important because that tells you what are you going to pick first. Is it a pitcher or a batter? So the setting is very important, and Will is right. Sometimes it could be a pitcher, and sometimes it could be a batter. Your first pick, and it goes by the settings. I will agree on that. It goes by the settings.
So yeah, so then the rules, like for someone that's never played fantasy baseball, so the rules is one thing that they really got to pay attention to then.
Yes, before anything else, yes.
So then what advice can you give? Like, let's say I'm just a brand new fantasy baseball manager, and what advice would you give me?
Go to the settings and see every let's say for home runs, if they have the settings for home runs, average, you always look at that first. You always look at the settings basically, and then the good thing that Yahoo it gives you everything. Who's gonna be on top 10, top 20. So you go by that. To the same app helps you out. It gives you all the number right there in front of you. So it helps you. I mean, number one pick is gonna be like we'll say Mike Trout. He's always on top. But now we got young players like Juan Soto. I wouldn't mind getting him in the first round. My first pick too, because he's been consistent since he got to the majors.
It's true.
So Juan Soto, 351 average. I mean, you don't do that. You really don't do that. I'm sorry, but that's respect. I mean, what he's doing is respect. Yes. Yeah. So Juan Soto for me is one of my top 3, definitely.
Nice. Would you agree with that, Will?
Yeah, for the most part. You definitely want to look at the settings because in a points league, you could have a home run worth 5 points, and then a hit worth 1 point, and then a run worth 1 point, and then an RBI worth 1 point, and then total bases each is 1 point. And then at the end, a home run is actually really worth like 9, 10, 11, 12 points because all those points kind of add up. But if home runs are only worth 3 points, or you don't count the total bases, then at the end of a home run, it's really only worth like 6 points. So another thing too is walks versus hits. In some leagues, hits are worth 2 points and walks are worth 1 point. Now, in that type of league, then on base percentage isn't as important as batting average. So you want to go with the higher batting average player. Who would be a good batting average? Like Corey Seager, right? He's always batting like 290, 300, something like that. But then in an on-base percentage league, I know he doesn't play the same position, but I'd rather have Bryce Harper, who doesn't have the really big average, but his on-base percentage is consistently over 400. And that's almost unheard of in today's baseball because of all the strikeouts and everyone trying to swing for the fences and everything. I think there's only like maybe 5 players that had above 400 last season for on-base percentage. And Bryce Harper consistently, since he's been a rookie, has been getting 400 on-base percentage. So that guy walks a lot. Same thing with Max Muncy, right? Max Muncy's batting average was really bad this whole season, down in like the 190s early in the season, and then he finally got it back up to like 210, 215 maybe. But his on-base percentage was 150 points higher than his batting average. So his on-base percentage around 350. That makes up for his batting average depending on what type of league you're in. That same thing with the categories league. If you don't have batting average as a category, but you have on base percentage as a category, those are the guys that you really want to target. But if you're in a batting average league, I would kind of stay away from guys like Max Muncy because he only has a 250 average. Unless he's available like in like the later rounds, round 15 or something, then of course I'm going to scoop a guy up like that.
Yeah.
But settings are definitely very important in preparation.
Cool. Hey, I hate to do this to you guys, but I want to hear your top 5 players. And I know I'm putting you on the spot because I didn't tell you guys this before the show, but just off the top of your head, like, is there 5 players that you want on your team for sure? They don't have to be big name players. They could be big name players. They could be pitchers. And we're talking about a points league. This is a points league. Yeah. Okay. And Will, I'm gonna ask you to go first since you're part of the Real Talk Baseball, and then I can't do that to Walter because he's a special guest, man. And, I'm just throwing them in there. He's probably like, man, you're just throwing fastballs. Like, what the hell? Like, I'm not ready for them yet. So, Will, what's your top 5?
So top 5, Mike Trout is definitely number 1 for me.
Okay.
Number 2, I would have to go Freddie Freeman. I know going 2 hitters first is kind of unheard of, but the way that pitchers have been the last few seasons, no one has been really consistent. Everyone has their kind of ups and downs. Garrett Cole, for example. Actually, Garrett Cole would probably be my number 3. So 2 batters and then a pitcher. Number 4, that's really hard.
I know. I know. That's why I said I didn't want to put you on the spot, but
I feel like those 3 guys are just one level above like everybody else. Number 4, I'm gonna go Jacob deGrom. I'm gonna go another pitcher.
Okay.
And number 5.
Bam.
I know.
Walter, you have your list ready, or
I have it ready. Yes.
I'm gonna say Cody Bellinger.
All right. So you got your 5. Those are your 5.
Those are my 5.
And I'm just putting you on your spot, man. I know that sucks, but we're gonna look at this recording and be like, yeah, you picked Bellinger 5. Why? No,
I agree.
What's yours, Walter?
I will get a bat first. And like I said, I like Juan Soto. Juan Soto, I see him one of the top 3 from now in 10 years from now. Yeah, he's gonna be there. So I'll go Juan Soto first.
Oh,
and then Freddie Freeman, MVP. I will say he's been consistent all this time, so I will get him number 2 definitely. And then I will get a pitcher and Will Strike, Garrett Cole. You cannot go wrong with him. He's good. And then I will go on my 4th pick. I will get Mike Trout. Mike Trout, yes. You cannot go wrong with him either. And then, like I said, a sleeper. I don't think he was a sleeper this year, but Justin Bieber. No, actually, not Justin Bieber. Not Justin Bieber. I'm sorry, the guy from Cleveland, Bieber.
Shane Bieber.
Yes, him. Wow, what he did was incredible. And
he was incredible.
He has stuff. So I see him like a good, like Garrett Cole stats right there.
Yeah, well, he was a Cy Young, and he did throw lights out, like, which is really good. And was he a sleeper? Like, yeah, I didn't know he pitched for the Indians, to be honest.
He wasn't a sleeper, but I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, we didn't see that coming. We didn't see that coming. That's the correct word. You're right. We didn't see that coming. And those are really good picks, to be honest. Like, both of you guys. I'm not I don't even know who to pick in top 5. Like I put you on the spot and I'm not even ready to pick my 5, you know. Like, but I know for sure I would have to have my number 1. I will go with Will on this one. I will be I'll go and say Mike Trout. And then the number 2, I feel like a shortstop is really, really hard to get because shortstops are, you know, I mean, I don't know if they're hard to get in fantasy baseball, but I think everybody's trying to get a shortstop, and there's so many good ones. I think I will have to go either Trevor Story because he has home runs and he plays in Colorado. So I think I'll go with him, number 2. Number 3, I'll go with a pitcher. We're forgetting about Max Scherzer. Max Scherzer has always been consistent to me. Like I've always picked him and I've always got good numbers from him. And then number 4, I'll get another pitcher. Strasburg's coming back, you know. Strasburg was out this last season. He should be back this season, right? The 2021. So he's another good pitcher that nobody even saw, but I'm not picking him. I'm just saying that. So I'll go ahead and get Bueller because he's amazing. He's been consistent. And then my last pick would be Abreu.
Really?
Yeah.
White.
So I think those top 5. I mean, and I'm just throwing names out there, and I think those 5 for me would be the first 5 I would pick. And I know I won't get all 5 of them because someone's going to scoop them up in the first round or second round. And these are all first, second round, even probably third, depending on how many people there is in the league. So, I mean, yeah. In 30 seconds, guys, tell me, what is it that you're expecting this year? Are you expecting to win, like all your fantasy leagues, or are you expecting just going into the playoffs? Go ahead, Will.
Well,
I'm expecting to go to playoffs every single time I play fantasy baseball. Championship, it's a little hard to really determine how many I think that I'm gonna win. I mean, I always go into the league thinking like right after the draft, like, dang, I got a sick team, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna be cocky as hell, and I'm gonna say that I'm gonna win all my leagues next year.
Nice. What about you, Walter?
I agree with that. Every time I join a fantasy baseball, that's my number 1 thing: win it all, and I always expect that.
Nice.
Yeah.
I just go in there to play, man. And then I just like to see the trash talk between everybody. Like, Walter, I know you like to trash talk. I love that. This is really cool. And then Will, you too, man. You guys trash talk. I have a lot of friends that like to trash talk. Oh my God, it was so much fun. Hopefully we can continue that this year to where we have a full season. We don't know yet what that number of games is going to be because it looks like everything out there is still like, you know, up in the air. A lot of teams look like they're not, you know, signing any players. There's a lot of free agents. And hopefully by the time we get this fantasy thing going, all those players that are free agents already found a team and we can go ahead and draft those players because it kind of sucks that these players are not getting signed and then the fantasy baseball starts and everybody already made their picks. In some leagues, they have a rule that the first week you have to keep these players. And, you know, that's kind of sucks because you wish you would have that player that hasn't been signed, and you know you have to wait until the second week of the season. You know, anything to add to that, Will and Walter, before we sign out?
Yeah, the team is very important where they go because that's going to determine the stats that they're going to produce. So if they go to, let's say, for example, the Dodgers, they're always on base. So whoever goes to the Dodgers will be one of my favorite picks right now because that Dodger lineup is sick. So the numbers are gonna be there all the time. So I'm gonna keep an eye who goes to LA, and there's a lot of names that wants to go to LA. So
that's true.
I'm gonna keep an eye on that. Yes.
Yeah, we need a third baseman.
Yeah.
I heard Colorado has a good one.
Oh yeah, Renato.
You want to dump the salary? Go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
Dodgers can pick up that salary. Will, any last words?
The only last thing that I would say is kind of going along with the conversation about keeping up with the settings. How you said that you would take a shortstop in the first 5 picks.
Yeah.
Sometimes I would agree with that, depending on how many shortstops you actually have on your team. Because a lot of times there's only one shortstop position that you have to fill, but then in a lot of other leagues you have a middle infield spot or 2 middle infield spots, or you have 2 two shortstops, or just an infield spot. So a lot of times, if you have, your shortstop early, you can always pick up that extra shortstop like a Bo Bichette or Ahmed Rosario or something like that in the later rounds. Yeah. So a strategy like that is, I think it's good in those type of leagues. But if you only have to have one shortstop in your whole league, I think that's a little early for a shortstop. I personally don't think that there's any shortstops that should go in the first round other than Francisco Lindor. Maybe Corey Seager, but the thing with Corey Seager though is he's always hurt.
Yeah, he's hot and cold.
He's always hurt, And this past season, he was healthy the whole season, but it was only 60 games. We've yet to see him play a complete full season other than his rookie year. Yeah. He had the Tommy John surgery, which could have been the one thing that helps him stay healthy in the future. A lot of times before, it was a shoulder thing, it was an elbow thing, it was a back thing. It was always something with him. But shorter season, same thing goes for like AJ Pollock, who signed with the Dodgers a couple years ago for 3 years. A lot of people were a little upset about that because he's another guy that's just kind of always hurt. And it was always kind of freak accidents where he would just run into the outfield wall or he rolled an ankle or something like that. So, other people were saying like, well, it was always just, something that kind of just happened. It wasn't anything that was like lingering or anything. But I just saw so many injuries consistent with that guy and Corey Seager and a lot of pitchers out there that constantly get hurt. Clayton Kershaw being one of them. That it's like right after Kershaw started getting on the IL every couple months, that's when he started deteriorating as a pitcher. He only throws 90 miles an hour instead of 95, and his curveball still looks amazing, but his slider isn't breaking as much, and his changeup isn't breaking as much. So that's another thing that I'd like to look at when I'm preparing for a draft.
Cool. Well, you heard it from Will and Walter and myself. Fantasy Baseball. This is our first edition episode on Fantasy Baseball. So hopefully you guys liked this video. If you guys did, go ahead and subscribe and follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Twitter accounts. I'm CarloBaseball. This is WillPower and Walter Perez joining us in this edition. Signing out.
See you guys.
Thank you, guys.